What up, everybody? This is the Dr. Football Ultimate Patriots podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Tien, recording tonight from my real live medical office in Dedham, Massachusetts. Joining me, as always, the CEO of Hedgebetter Industries, recording from Braintree, Mass. Hedgebetter Studio, Justin Fine. Justin, what is going on, my man? How are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. We got some warm weather peeking in. The days are getting a little longer. It's nice, man. Spring is in the air, and NFL free agency off to a bang.
Warm weather and a barrage of
Yeah.
free agency.
Yeah, it feels like we just ended, right? It feels like the Super Bowl was just a couple weeks ago, and I mean it was, but yeah, how quickly we move on to the next chapter, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everything's different. And, you talk about that. I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about is the Eagles kind of getting gutted in this free agency thing. And last time we recorded, we were saying how the Eagles were primed to have a dynasty.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about that anymore based on what's happened the last few weeks.
Yeah, a lot of changes. I mean, look, when you're a team that's that deep, I guess you got a little bit of flexibility, but yeah, definitely interesting to see some of the moves that they made.
Well, let's get into the Patriots. This is a Patriots podcast, and we're going to start with the Pats, and then we're going to move it out to around the rest of the league. And I want to begin before I even hear what you think about what the Pats did. And I think we're going to have a little difference of opinion on this.
Okay.
I just want to give you three big picture takes, and I want to see what you think of them. Okay. We'll go one. I'm going to fire them off, and then we'll go one by one.
Yeah.
Number one is we can end the narrative that Robert Kraft won't spend money because he just spent a ton. Whether you hate what they did or you love what they did, they threw around some big time money in the last couple of days. Number two, Mike Vrabel is running the show in Foxborough. These moves clearly tell me, I don't care what Elliott Wolf says in his press conference. The fact that Mike Vrabel is even here tells you that he has total control.
Yeah.
And the moves that they made the last 2 days reek of Mike Vrabel's influence in the organization. There's no doubt to me Vrabel is the final decision maker and has all the power at One Patriot Place. And then last but not least, this team is better than everyone thinks they are. Gerard Mayo was the worst coach in the NFL. He was probably the worst coach in the NFL in the last 10 years. There are holes on this roster, especially at tackle and wide receiver, but the talent is better. And what they did the last 2 days, combined with having a real NFL coach, a developing quarterback, and a team that's way better than we think it is, I really am encouraged about where they are, though I still have some things I want them to still do. All right, so you can fire off. What do you think of those three takes?
So I agree with everything you said. I think, I think that it's very clear Vrabel's running the show. I think that they made moves to get better. I think this team is underrated. I actually have some very high expectations for them in this upcoming 2025 season. But you know what? I'll say what I texted you the other night, and that's, I like all of these moves. I don't love any of them. And, look, there's different reasons for that. I'm not saying I dislike any of the moves. I think they all help make this team better. I think they all help address needs. But I could go one by one and pick flaws with them. So I do think overall, like you said, it was nice to see the Patriots come out spending money. It was nice to see them addressing areas of concern. It's nice to see that Vrabel's influence is already starting to be felt. And again, feeling very good, feeling very positive about the expectations for this coming year. That being said, I think they still missed out on some targets. And I think the fact that they missed out on those targets says a little bit still about where this organization is as a franchise. And I think that some of the moves they made, like I said, they're good. They help fill some needs, but I don't love them. So that's kind of my overall take.
We'll get into the details of what they did and why they did it and our take on it. But to me, I mean, I feel like 30 hours ago, I wasn't even sure how committed the Krafts were to winning. As much as I'm a supporter of the Krafts, and I always kind of defend them, just based on what we've seen the last few years, I was really questioning, are they even going to spend money? So I'm super encouraged that they're spending money. And I think that behind them spending money, Justin, is an acknowledgement of where this franchise is right now. This is not the Belichick and Brady years. Those are gone. And we need to take chances. The Patriots need to take chances in free agency to be competitive. And hopefully those chances work out. But gone are the days where we have Brady and we can fill the roster around him and we're going to win 12 games. They need to make gambles in free agency. They need to overpay to get guys to come up to a team that's 4-13 in back-to-back years. And I'm most thrilled and encouraged that they did it. Whether it works out or not, to me, that's just a huge step, that they're at least committed enough to throw some big money out there. They overpaid for all these guys, and
Right.
we'll get to that in a second. But I'm glad they did it, even still.
Well, look, we talked about the fact that, we've said this, that this franchise is in a situation right now, especially when it comes to acquiring free agents and being a place that people want to come to play, that there's still a lot to prove, right? I think they took some big steps towards fixing that. You brought in the right coach. You hopefully have your franchise quarterback. But with all that being said, I think we all kind of came to the realization that, look, you're probably going to need to overspend on some of these guys in order to get them here, to keep that momentum going and to keep building. Because right now, I don't think anyone would say New England, as far as for a player's destination, is at the top of their list. So it's just all part of rebuilding the franchise back up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that it's Kansas City's time now, where they're
Right.
going to get those guys that come in on, lower contracts because they want to win a championship. That
Right.
is not the Patriots anymore. That those days
Yep.
are long gone. All right, let's get into what they actually did, Justin, in some of the moves that they made. I'll say this: I love what they did, but I also don't love what they didn't do. If you follow what I'm
Yeah.
saying, because there are still a couple big holes on this roster that I'm a little concerned about. But it sounds like you got a little bit more of a negative take on it. So I'd love to hear what your reason is and why you don't love what they did.
Well, okay. So first of all, like you said, you overpaid for a lot of these guys, right? So I think you have to, and I get it, it's a necessary evil, but just coming from the standpoint that some of these guys maybe have a little bit of an inflated contract, I think that factors into it. Yeah, look, let's start with Milton Williams. Milton Williams, I know how high everyone is on him. He's only 25 years old. The guy's a freaking beast, right? I get that. Um, but this is a guy who didn't even start and was a rotational player in Philadelphia, right? And so you got a guy that, yes, I think he's very good. I think he'll hopefully have an impact, but he was playing alongside some of the best players in football on the best defense in football, and he was a rotational guy. So I'd love to see what type of impact he has on his own in more of a mediocre defense, standing on his own, being a full-time starter, in every down player. I'm not saying he's going to disappoint, but I'm just saying you made him the highest paid player in Patriots history. Uh, I saw that stat the other day. He's the high as far as AAV, the highest paid Patriots player. And you think about the 2-decade long dynasty runs that we went on. Milton Williams is now the highest paid player in New England Patriots history. And he still has a lot to prove as far as I'm concerned. So that's number one. Carlton
I'll
Davis.
say this about the Milton Williams signing.
Yeah.
Of all the signings that they made, that might be the one I like the least.
Yeah.
For the reason you just said. I'm a little concerned because they really paid him franchise player like money.
Yes.
And he has had the benefit of playing on a really good
Yes.
defense, lining up next to Jalen Carter his entire career. It makes me a little nervous. All that said, I'm glad they did it because they needed help on that defensive line so bad. They were so bad against the run. Their front seven was so bad last year that as long as this guy isn't a total flop, I'm kind of okay with grossly overpaying him.
Look, and he's only 25 years old. I still think there's a ton of upside for him, but you definitely you made that deal knowing that there's some question marks there, right? And again, it's not that I'm not willing to take those risks, but it's, I think, far from a perfect signing for the reasons we just laid out, right? You look at Morgan Moses, um, guy's 34 years old. He's had problems in the past with injuries. I think the guy is clearly, he's a mountain of a man. He's a veteran. He's a beast. He's probably going to come in and do wonders for as far as leadership goes. But he's at the end of the year, he's a 34-year-old guy who's got injury problems, and you wonder just how much left he has in the
See,
tank.
I like that signing because they didn't pay him a ton.
Right.
Okay, fine. Who cares about the money? He's a veteran guy. You hit the nail on the head. It's the leadership piece. He's a solid tackle. They need a
Agree.
solid tackle. The biggest thing you can say against him is that he's old and he gets injured sometimes. But when he's played, he might have been the best tackle on this market in terms of like when he's healthy, what he can actually do on the field. I mean, Cam Robinson has had ups and downs in his career. The guy Moore that signed in Tennessee, he is not, I think, all that he's cracked up to be. And the Kansas City Chiefs just paid $15 million for, I think, a tackle, the guy that's taken 200 snaps to tackle the last 2 years and has been okay when he's been in there, but he's a swing tackle. So I like that we got Morgan Moses at $8 million, because I think this is a guy that, if he stays healthy, and a lot of players play at tackle into their late 30s, we've seen that again and again, he could really stabilize that position for just a 2 or 3 year window while we develop some younger players.
And I hope he does. And look, again, I'm prefacing everything I'm saying, with the fact I don't dislike any of these moves, right? I like all of these moves. I'm just pointing out what's preventing me from loving these moves, right? And so I like it. I don't love it because, like I said, he's 34 years old and he's got some injury history, right? But I still think it's a good signing. I think he brings a lot to the team. I think the same thing with Carlton Davis. He's 28 years old. He's not old, but he's far from playing his best football like he was in Tampa Bay. You did overpay for him a little bit. I hope he's a nice little compliment on the other side to Christian Gonzalez, but I've always thought he's a little overrated, and I think he's a little past his prime. So for those reasons, I like it. I don't love it. Robert Spillane, I think that was kind of an average signing. They got him for decent money. I don't hate that. I'll tell you my favorite, in Matt Collins. Matt Collins, as far as wide receiver goes, I think that's, an okay signing, but he's not your answer at wide receiver. He's a third or fourth guy. I'll tell you my favorite signing. My favorite signing was Harold Landry. That was my favorite signing because he's 28 years old. He brings you that pass rushing, pressure off the edge that you desperately need. And he did really well in that Vrabel scheme in Tennessee. So that's my favorite signing. But I'll conclude all of this by saying that I think what these free agent moves are telling me is that we're drafting Will Campbell at number 4. That's what everything is telling me. I don't know.
Or Travis Hunter. I mean, the one position they really didn't make a meaningful signing at, unless you count Matt Collins, which I don't know if I do, is wide receiver. So in all the buzzes, they love Travis Hunter. So I don't know. I mean, I think if Hunter's there, they're taking him. But to get back to the free agency class, I mean, I get what you're saying, like it, don't love it. And I have the same feeling because as we said, they overpaid. But I think you have to also take a look at the big picture side of this, which is that this was a defense that really needed fortification at every level. And they went out at every level of this defense and got an NFL caliber player to plug in. Now, they might not meet expectations. They might not live up to the money they paid. But I think as a team, they're going to be a much better defense. I love the Robert Spillane signing. I love that we're going to stick a guy that gets 150 tackles a year, that plays with edge and attitude, that has leadership qualities. We're plugging him into the middle of our linebacker because we've got Jelani Tavai. He's a decent linebacker. I think Bentley still got some miles left on him. Okay, we got Harold Landry and Keon White now on the outside. The Patriots just went from a thin unit with a frail front seven to the complete opposite, a deep unit. And a lot of their injured guys should be back. Let's hope Christian Barmore is back next year. Let's hope Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar are back next year. I like Marcus Jones. Maybe they sign Jonathan Jones back as a depth piece. I like this guy, Alec Austin. I thought he has a role. Overall, I think this defense as a team is going to be a good team defense next year.
I would even, and look, this might be an overreaction. I think this defense has the potential to be a top 5, top 7 defense in the NFL. And I know that's high expectations, but I actually truly do think if these guys all work out and they stay healthy and they get some of these guys back like Barmore, especially, you add Vrabel at the helm, I think you could have a top tier, dare I say, elite defense. And I know that's big talk, but it wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to me, one of the keys to that is not even the guys that they signed, but I mean, I think in a sense, Christian Barmore's health is really the straw that stirs all this drink and potentially brings that defense to the next level. And we know what Milton Williams can do when he's playing next to another Pro Bowl caliber player.
Right.
So I think if you got Barmore in there, I think you can count on getting the best from Milton Williams. If Williams has to be in there alone, the only guy in there, then that's when I start to get worried about that signing. But I think if you plug Barmore in there, teams are going to have a really hard time on the line of scrimmage with Barmore and Williams and Keon White off the edge and some of the other players they have. I think he is the total key to this thing. If Barmore can come back and play at the level he was playing at before he had the blood clot last year.
100%. I mean, he is the key between having a decent defense and potentially a stellar defense is his
Agreed.
health and performance. Yeah.
Agreed. Because he really is he's a Jalen Carter like player. I think when he at the end of 2023, he was playing at that level. I'm sorry. He was all over the place in 23. He was the only bright spot from that 23 team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. The guy is a beast. You hope that the time off, he has been able to get his body healthy and get in shape and just ease all those concerns. I mean, I hope he comes back like roaring out the gates. So, we'll see, but yeah, the health is a concern, but hopefully it's all under control this year. And look, one other thing I'll say about this front seven is going to be complemented by what should be a fairly talented secondary. I mean, I have pretty high expectations for the secondary too. You brought in Carlton Davis to be your cornerback too. You got what should be a good cornerback one in his third year development. You got guys like Kyle Duggar. Like that's a pretty talented unit at all three levels if they can stay healthy.
I agree 1,000%. I mean, they're deep and talented now at every level. It's almost like they made up for all the years of bad drafts in one fell swoop, which is going to be needed because I think they're going to have to be a good defense to win games. Let's talk about the offense, Justin. As much as they were super aggressive and put a ton of money into this defense, I mean, let's face it, the offensive moves kind of underwhelming. I said I like the Morgan Moses. I do. I like the wide receiver from Matt Collins from Buffalo. I do. He's a great number 4 receiver. There was nothing really that's moved the needle for this offense. What's your take on the lack of really a big move on the offense? Should they have been on DK Metcalf? Should they have been in a Laramie Tunsil? Should they have done more? Where do you think they're headed with this whole thing on the offensive side of the ball?
I mean, short answer is I think I would be shocked if we weren't, staring right in the face what draft night's going to look like. I think draft night's you're going to get a lot of O-line. I think you're going to get weapons. I think you're going to get receivers and running backs. Like that to me is what you're going to get on draft night. But I think it's interesting because obviously, look, they got that number 4 pick. We had alluded to the fact that they're probably either going to go O-line or receiver, which is their 2 biggest needs. But you talk about some of the guys that they missed out on. You wonder how much of it is them not wanting to go out and be serious, seriously throw their hats in the ring, and how much of it is still some of that, I guess, hangover as far as players not wanting to be part of this offense. I truly do wonder that. No, it's interesting. I think to me, it tells me that this team and Vrabel kind of alluded to this, that they're starting in the trenches. They're going to address both their lines and then kind of work their way out. And so they started, they did a pretty good job, I think, of the defensive front. They brought Morgan Moses in, and I think they're going to keep rounding out the trenches and then start to fill out the skill players. But that's where the emphasis is clearly for this team: defense in the trenches.
Should they have been in on DK Metcalf? I saw that. I'm not so concerned about the money that he was paid. He was paid way more than he's worth. And I think we all need to do a little bit of an adjustment on how we view DK Metcalf. He makes highlight plays. Go look at his statistics. He is a very good wide receiver. He is not on the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, really top guy level. He's a rung below that. He just got paid like he is a top guy, but he's really not at that level. I wasn't so enamored with the idea of bringing in DJ Metcalf, but then I saw the price that they gave up for him, and I'm like, a 2nd round pick and a late pick next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at that price, it even though I'm not in love with the player, it gives me pause. Should the Pats have been in on DK Metcalf, Justin?
Yeah, I think they should have. And for the I like DK Metcalf. I think he would have been great to bring here. I know, he's been in the league a while, but I think people forget just how young he still is. I think he's still only like 26 years old, something like that. So, I think I think that could have been a real good target for Drake May. And it's actually kind of interesting because you talk about the place that he picked, Pittsburgh. That I would
Yeah.
argue at this point that the Patriots have a better quarterback situation than the Steelers do. So like
Absolutely. Well,
it
the Steelers don't have a quarterback on their roster, so I think that's a safe bet for
right.
now.
Exactly. Or potentially a Russell Wilson, right? And at this point, look, I'm taking Drake May 10 out of 10 times over Russell Wilson. So, I look at it
What
and
about Aaron Rodgers? What if they sign Aaron Rodgers?
maybe that's part of the pitch. Maybe that's part of the pitch. I don't know. I again, it's like I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers, as good as he used to be, can't dig down deep and muster up the strength to put together a season if he's got the weapons and the right coaches and the right team. But it's just like if you're DK Metcalf, I mean, how are you going to hang your hat on either Russell Wilson or potentially Aaron Rodgers, right? Like it's funny because I just think, when you look at how much money we've paid out and the fact that we've been willing to overpay, you look at the compensation that the Seahawks took for DK Metcalf, which we have, and I think we easily could have given up. It's like, well, if we could have matched the asking price, if we could have matched in theory what he wanted for money, why does he choose a place that has a worse quarterback situation? So it tells me that didn't we didn't really seriously pursue it.
I think that's exactly right. I don't think the Patriots were really all that interested in Metcalf, is the sense I get for whatever reason. And like just I know he's a highlight guy, but you look at his numbers. I mean, 66 catches, 992 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. The year before, 66 catches, 1100 yards, 8 touchdowns. The year before that, 90 catches for 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. The year before that, 75 catches, 967 yards, 12 touchdowns. Okay. But like, let's not talk about this guy like he is, Justin Jefferson
Right.
is, I guess, my point. And I think it was a combination of that and the fact that maybe there was some talk that maybe his attitude, Vrabel didn't think it was a good fit here in
Interesting.
Foxborough. But I agree with you. Like this guy was totally gettable. All the talk about I want to go to warm weather, I want to go to a good quarterback, that was all BS.
Yeah, exactly.
Because at the end of the day, he went to the high bidder. He was there for the taking if the Patriots wanted him. For some reason, it seems pretty obvious they didn't want this guy.
I agree. And just to add another little layer to it, you think back to Vrabel's time in Tennessee, and he loved AJ Brown, utilizing AJ Brown in Tennessee, right? He actually was, I think, pretty upset when AJ Brown was traded to the Eagles. That's a pretty decent comp, right? A big-bodied, athletic playmaker. You would think Vrabel would want somebody like that in this offense. So the fact that, again, given given the similarities between a DK and an AJ Brown, given the fact that the Patriots had the cap space to pay him, the assets to trade for him, in a better quarterback situation, I think you're right when to say that there's got to be some external factor that Vrabel and the Patriots saw in DK that just in the need. It's not like you could argue again, the Patriots need a receiver more than the Steelers do. So it's like everything was there. There's got to be an external factor that prevented this team from doing it.
No question about it. Justin, you mentioned AJ Brown, and that's a name that actually has been rumored to be linked to the Patriots because of Vrabel and Brown's connection. Kind of surprisingly, because AJ Brown seems pretty entrenched in Philadelphia,
Right.
but I have a couple takes about this AJ Brown thing too, because first of all, there's no way I'm trading the number 4 pick for this guy. He's a very good receiver. He's not Justin Jefferson.
No.
So I'm not giving up the number 4 pick for a guy that caught 67 passes and 7 touchdowns last year in a good offense. And has, he's just not that good. So that's number 1. And number 2 is there's no way after the fire sale and all the players they just lost that the Eagles are going to give up AJ Brown. I mean, they've lost too many key players already in free agency. They're not giving up AJ Brown, who's under contract, and just further altering the dynamic of that team that's already taken a hit.
Yeah, I
So
agree. Yeah, I don't think AJ Brown's going anywhere. I think it'd be crazy for him to want to go somewhere. Like, who wins the Super Bowl and then's looking for out of town, right? Like, I don't know. I think it'd be tough. I've heard that rumor too, but yeah, I mean, they just paid the guy. He just won a Super Bowl. They just let a bunch of other guys walk. I don't think AJ Brown's going anywhere.
Well, and let me say this too. Let's just put this out there that this team had so many needs going into
Right.
this year, right? Like, yes, they're not as bad as I think people think they are, but they had some big holes on this roster. And there was a lot of years of bad drafts that put them in that position. You don't fix all this in one or even two off seasons. And my point is that if you're going to have to go through this offseason and have a need that is still unmet, I'm okay with that being wide receiver. I'm not okay with that being offensive line, and I'm not okay with that being a defense. You
Yeah.
need defense. The defense was terrible last year. I can't watch that again. And you need to protect Drake May. It's okay in my book if they don't get a true number one wide receiver until next year. And I would point to Josh Allen and his development in Buffalo, where he didn't get Stephon Diggs until his third year when he was ready for him. And I think that it's what I love, a big name, a list receiver, absolutely. But if I have to leave one need unmet, that's the one I'm going with.
I agree, especially because we got a bunch of receivers in this roster that I'm still not counting out. I think they weren't developed and utilized the way they should. They should have been, and I still think there's a lot of room for growth. I mean, I think Pop Douglas has been underutilized for 2 straight years. We still don't know what Jalen Polk and Javon Baker have. I think. Look, I'm not super high on them, but I'm not ready to count them out yet. Um, there's some guys on this roster that I still think can take another step forward with the right coaches, the right player development. And we talked about the fact that the Patriots didn't have good player development the last 2 years.
Yep.
So I'd like to see what we actually have in that receiving room.
Absolutely. I mean, look at what Drake May did, Justin, with Kayshon Boutte.
Yeah,
Where was Kayshon Boutte's career headed until Drake May came
right.
in? And all of a sudden, Boutte looked like a half decent receiver once May was in at quarterback. May is going to get the best. I think he is that kind of player that he is going to get the best out of whoever's in that receiver room with one big caveat. You have to protect him. You give Drake May a good offensive line in front of him, and I think he is the kind of player that will turn average receivers into
I agree.
good ones into great ones, right?
Yep.
Bad ones into average ones. That's what I think you have with Drake May. So I think the franchise's plan right now is build that offensive line, take some chances on skill position guys in the draft, have a good defense, and Drake May with real coaching and a decent offensive line will give them a decent offense.
I totally agree. Yeah, if you had to have one position that you didn't address coming into the 2025 years as sufficiently as you should have, I agree. It should be wide receiver. I think they've done a pretty good job in that defense. Um, I think they still can have a chance to make some moves in that offensive line. And obviously they're going into the draft with that number 4 overall pick. So, but they're not going to completely plug all these holes overnight, but I think it's a really good start. And I think depending on, how they finish out free agency and what they do in the draft, like this can be a team that is drastically different in terms of roster construction and expectations heading into 2025.
I agree, Justin, 100%. And there's one other name we haven't mentioned yet, one free agent signing we haven't mentioned yet that I want to run by you because I think it is a little bit interesting, and that's Josh Dobbs, the
Yeah.
the 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 third string quarterback or
Yeah.
backup quarterback. And a lot of people are speculating that Joe Milton will be traded for a draft pick now that Josh Dobbs has been signed. My take on this is that there's absolutely no reason to trade Joe Milton right now. I love the idea of Milton and May together in terms of the fact that May's already missed time with injury, with a concussion. Milton and May play similar games, and I think he would be a good backup. If they're thinking of trading Joe Milton, it's because they want him gone, because they don't want him nipping on Drake May's heels and having every time May has a bad game or a bad quarter, people saying, bring in Joe Milton. I almost wonder, Justin, if you bring in Dobbs in getting rid of Milton, if it happens, it is more because of that locker room side than actually the on-field piece.
Well, I think another component of that too, maybe, and I don't know how much this plays into it, is what's going to happen to Joe Milton's value? Like, are they looking at it in terms of like, hey, this is the best time to capitalize on Joe Milton, like peak value, or do you take the chance that he sits in the bench the rest of the year, and his value dips when you go to move him? I don't know. I wonder if they're just trying to sell high type of thing. I actually really like the Josh Dobbs backup. I think like he's a smart guy. I think he's a capable guy. I think he'll be a good veteran presence in that locker room. Like, you see what he did when he went to like Detroit and San Francisco and even Minnesota. And I mean, the guy really seems like a true professional who can step in on a moment's notice and give you a good game and help you compete. So I like the Josh Dobbs signing, but I don't know. I wonder if it's more so about just trying to capitalize on Milton when his value is the highest. I heard someone the other day saying that Joe Milton could potentially fetch a second round pick, which I think is
Right.
crazy. But is that not part of it? Saying, Jesus, someone will give us a
Well,
second round pick right now.
if you could get a second round pick for Milton right now, I think that would be hard to pass up.
Right.
But I've also heard a lot of like thirds, fourths, fifths. I'm not trading Joe Milton, a guy that now people are saying maybe he has a potential to be able to play quarterback in this league. I'm not trading him for something unless it's going to move the needle. Like I'll take my chances that this guy continues to develop, a la who is the guy that got traded to Seattle before Russell Wilson? Matt Flynn,
Yeah.
a la Jimmy Garoppolo here,
Right.
and turning him into a real asset. That's what I'm holding on to this guy and trading him if he develops. I would rather lose a fourth or fifth round pick and find out Joe Milton is a dud than trade him for a fourth or fifth round pick and find out we traded a franchise quarterback
Yeah.
for a fourth or fifth round pick. So I don't think trading Joe Milton makes any sense right now unless you're concerned about the dynamic in the locker room and what happens when things start going bad for May. To me, that's the only reason you would even entertain it at this point.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying they should trade him. And if you want to look at it through that lens, then the Josh Dobbs signing is really there to add some veteran mentorship to your 2 second-year quarterbacks. Like that's really what it is at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think part of the appeal of Josh Dobbs is that he's a guy that, yes, he can start a game. He may even be able to win a few games, but everyone knows he's the backup. There's not
Yeah,
one
that's true.
person that's going to be calling for Drake May to be benched for Josh Dobbs ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if this team hits a rough patch this year, based on that garbage game against Buffalo, which I think was a total double-edged sword, people are going to be calling for Joe Milton. You're going to hear it in the preseason, right? If Joe Milton comes in the second half of those preseason games and he looks good, you're going to hear people calling for Joe Milton instead of May. Trade May and bring Milton. That's what people have already said. I've already heard that, and it's only going to get worse. So I can understand why they might want to just nip that in the bud. If they can get a draft pick for this guy and just get him out of here so he's not a problem, not to say he's done anything to contribute to that, but just the nature of the situation, I don't think that's I think that's the motivation to do it.
Yeah, I look, I get it. I think the last thing you want, I think, is any sort of controversy, any sort of extraneous distractions in that quarterback room. I mean, you know what? To me, I think that's all honestly, that's secondary. Like what they do with Joe Milton, what they do with Josh Dobbs, like it's all secondary. Like, we're all looking at Drake May is the number one guy, potential franchise guy. We're all looking at the other holes in this roster, the defense, the weapons, the offensive line. Like there's a ton that I'm worried about. Like I'm just not I'm just not super concerned, I guess, with the Joe Milton situation right now. That's how I look at it. I think look, if you do get a second round pick, I think you take it and you run with it because that's a steal at this point. But if the value's not there, I think you hold on to him, like, and see what happens. But I really hope it's not a distraction. And hopefully it won't be, but we'll see.
All right. So before we move on to some of the stuff that happened around the league, let's just ask you. I want you to grade this first few days of free agency for the Pats and tell me, just give me a grade for the first few days of free agency so far.
I'll give them a B plus.
Okay.
Give them a B plus. I think
Agreed.
I think they filled a bunch of holes. They have a bunch of good signings, um, but I don't consider them great signings, and they didn't fill all the holes. So I'm going to give it a B plus.
I'm gonna give him an A minus. I like what they did. I don't think they were ever gonna fill all their holes this
Yeah.
year because there was just too much to do. I think they overpaid. I think, but I think this. I think that this team, based on what they did the last 2 days, I think they're like 2 or 3 players away from having a realistic chance to be a playoff team next year. And I think that if they go out and they get a couple of good players in the draft and maybe another player from free agency, I really don't see any reason why this team isn't set up to be a respectable team in 2025 and a playoff team in 2025. So I think they did what they had to do to sort of move the needle for this franchise. They spent a ton of money,
Yep.
which I wasn't sure they were even going to do. And for all those reasons, I like it. A minus.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll I told you I got high expectations for them. I'm actually expecting this to be a playoff team in 2025. I think
Yeah.
I think this is the team that I'm expecting to finish second in the division ahead of Miami, ahead of the Jets. This is the team that I'm expecting to be able to win 10 or 11 games, especially given their schedule. So, and that's as of now. Forget if they go into the draft and they knock it out of the park, or they make another big trade or bring in another free agent or two. I mean, that's only going to bolster the case. But I got high expectations for these guys right now.
Agreed. I completely agree. I mean, I'm going into this year expecting them to be a 8 to 10 win team and to be in this thing until late in the year.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
All right, let's go around the league. There's been so many crazy things. Let's just like lightning round this out because there's so many moves. I'm just gonna fire names at you, and we can talk about what our take is. I want to start with Sam Darnold in Seattle. I think it's intriguing. That's intriguing what they did, trading Geno Smith, who has been a good quarterback for them, to Vegas and bringing in Sam Darnold. I see it this way. I think Darnold has a much higher upside. I also think he has a much higher risk. I'm not sold on Sam Darnold's ability to play in this league. He had an awesome year last year. Good for him. That was literally a best case scenario on a really good team with stack wide receivers and a great offensive coach. Seattle is not a bad situation. It's just probably not what he had in Minnesota. I think it's going to be one of the real stories of the year if Sam Darnold is going to be able to continue to salvage his career in Seattle, or if this ends up being a huge dud.
I'm leaning towards huge dud. I mean, look, I actually like Sam Darnold. I'm rooting for him, but you saw how he kind of crapped his pants in the playoffs when the going got tough and the lights were on. And not only that, but the guy downgraded pretty much the entire offense around him, right? He has a worse offensive line, he has worse receivers, he has a
Yep.
worse tight end, he has a worse running
Yep.
back, right? So the guy has
And
down
coaching.
and
Don't forget who's the offensive
and
coaching.
exactly, and worse coaching. So every facet of that offense, every level of that offense, Sam Darnold took a step back. He has regression. There's already significant questions about whether he can be a big moment, big game player. And you paid him like $35 million a year. So you paid him big money. What I don't really understand is it's like, you look at Seattle, it's like they just cut Tyler Law, or they released Tyler Lockett. They trade DK Metcalf. They move on from Geno Smith. And it feels like they're heading into a rebuild, and then they go out and they pay Sam Darnold $35 million
Agreed.
a year. It just
Agreed.
doesn't make sense. I feel like they should be taking their shot in the draft. They got some talented players in that defense. I mean, I feel like that money should be going to shoring up that defense, bringing in some free agents, take a shot on a guy in the draft or something. I think it's it's a bizarre
How about
move.
the decision to trade DK Metcalf? If you're bringing in Sam Darnold
Yeah.
to be your quarterback, don't you have to keep DK Metcalf on your roster? I mean,
Right.
like if Sam Darnold's going to be successful, we've seen where he'll be successful. He was a disaster everywhere else he's been. He had great success in Minnesota with really a great team around him.
Right.
You have great receivers, Seattle. So why are you pushing DK Metcalf out the door? Was it the cap? I don't know. I feel like teams tend to find a way to work around that when they really want to. I feel like if you're going to bring in a guy like Darnold, don't you have to keep DK Metcalf?
100%. That's kind of my thinking is like, you know, they made some moves that are super indicative of a rebuild, and then they make this move that's like, oh, we're a quarterback away from competing. You know, it's like it doesn't make any sense to me. Um, I wonder if I know Sam Darnold's younger, but I wonder performance wise if you're even going to get an upgrade from Geno Smith. Um, I just think it's an overall it's a super weird move and it sends mixed signals to me.
Completely. And just to like look at the other side of this too, right? Let's look at Minnesota's angle on this.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it say that they were willing to even let this guy go? You know, I get that they drafted JJ McCarthy. I'm sorry, like you don't know what you have. You might have an idea of what you
Right.
think JJ McCarthy is, but you just watched Sam Darnold put up 35 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. How do you let a guy like that walk away if you really believe that he's the real deal? So that's one side of it. And the other side, to give you the reverse double angle here, okay? Look at what Kirk Cousins was able to do in Minnesota. And then what happened to him last year in
Yeah.
Atlanta. So add it all up, right? And it's like buyer beware with Sam Darnold.
Big time, big time. I think Seattle's heading for a regression. Um, I think that's going to be a team that struggles. I think that's going to be a sub 500 team this year, and I think Sam Darnold's going to struggle. I mean, again, he downgraded at every position, including his coaching staff. And now he's got even more pressure on him after blowing the big game in the playoffs and then signing a $35 million deal. Like it's just all leading to uh, what I think is going to be an implosion in Seattle at some point.
Exactly. And one last word about this, then we'll move on. You just hit on something else. He had zero expectations last year in
Correct.
Minnesota. He was a backup quarterback, had a good camp. The starter got hurt, and he found himself as the starter in an ideal situation. No one expected
Yes.
anything from him. Now he is the man
Yep.
in Seattle. There, he is the franchise in Seattle. So that's another piece of that. He's shown at other points in his career that he did not do well in that role. So I mean,
Exactly.
honestly, I'm rooting for the guy.
Me too.
I hope he has success in Seattle. I think he's an easy guy to root for. But I'm just saying, like, it's going to be interesting to watch and watch out because I think there's a lot of red flags there.
Yep. Totally agree.
All right, let's go to Miles Garrett. I love this one, Justin,
Yeah.
because this guy was like, I want out of Cleveland. I'm done. And then they just threw a giant bag of cash at his doorstep, the highest, I think, non-quarterback contract in NFL history. And now all of a sudden, it's happy family again.
Yeah, I mean, I guess money will do that, right?
Yep.
The contract will fix some of those problems. I think for Cleveland, it's interesting, because you're Cleveland sitting in their position, um, and it's like, they probably could have gone let him go and then gone out and drafted like an Abdul Carter, right, to try to replace him if they wanted to do it on the cheap. Um, I thought the Browns are another team that I felt were heading into a potential rebuild. So it's like, okay, interesting. You throw that much money at Miles Garrett. But you know what? Good for Miles Garrett. He deserves it. He's a beast. I think he's the best edge rusher, or you call it defensive lineman in the league. One of the best defensive players in the league. Period. But it's a lot of freaking money to spend, especially after you just gave you just tied up a ton of money in the Deshaun Watson contract. It's like,
Yeah.
where's the cap room going to be to kind of add the talents that this roster needs? Um, I don't know, but it would be very interesting if they go out and like draft a Cam Ward, and now it's like, okay, they have the defense that they thought they might have, had, because again, the Browns defense has been pretty good the last couple of years. Like that's not been their Achilles heel, right? It's been their quarterback, it's been their offense. So it's like maybe they figure, hey, if we can keep our defense shirt up, go out and draft a guy like Cam Ward, maybe that's how we turn things around. I don't know. Interesting move for the Browns, but I'm happy to see Miles Garrett get paid.
If I'm the Browns, if I have any confidence at all in any of these quarterbacks in the draft, then 100% I'm taking one of them. I think this move kind of makes me think that the Browns are leaning towards taking a quarterback this year.
Right.
I say that because I don't think they're going to draft Abdul Carter after just paying Garrett
Exactly.
that kind of money. And they have not brought in a quarterback from anywhere else. I can't believe they're foolish enough to roll it back with Deshaun Watson again. They did restructure his contract. this offseason. But I can't see them going into this year with Watson as anything more than maybe a bridge quarterback to
Right.
hold the fort down for a younger guy, because I think the Deshaun Watson experiment is more or less over.
Yeah.
So I feel like, to tie that Patriots angle back into it, look, it works to the Patriots' advantage, I think, if the Browns take a quarterback at number 2. And this move kind of does give me a little bit of a towel, maybe, that's which way the Cleveland's leaning.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that's probably what's going to happen. And, yeah, I mean, look, again, Myles Garrett deserves the money. Best edge rusher in football. So, you were kind of, your hand was kind of forced if you're Cleveland, because I don't think he was taking a deal. I think he could have gotten good money somewhere else. So yeah,
Yeah.
hand was forced, and now I think you go get a quarterback on a rookie deal and hope for the best.
It's the same thing we're talking about with the Patriots.
Yeah.
Who wants to play in Cleveland? If you want Myles Garrett to stay there, you better overpay him, because otherwise he'll be elsewhere. All right, let's go to I find another interesting move is this Devonta Adams to LA. I think Adams is kind of cooked. I didn't really want him in New England, but if he's going to be successful anywhere, I feel like that's as good a landing spot for him as anywhere with Nakua and Matt Stafford and the coaching out there. Kind of like this move, Devonta Adams to the Rams, Justin.
I kind of like it if especially if you're going to get rid of Cooper Cup. I mean, you look at the Jets last year, and I actually think, like, Devontae Adams showed that he still had a little bit left in the tank. I mean, I know Aaron Rodgers was pathetic, but Devontae kind of came on in the second half of the year after he got traded, and I think he showed that he could at least be a productive wide receiver too, somewhere behind Puka. I think the Rams will get the most of him. McVay will get the most of them, and you still got Matt Stafford there. So I actually really like I like the landing spot for Devontae Adams. I do. I think it's a good place for him, and it's like I just said, it's a place where he doesn't have to go and be the one. You got Puka there; he can just go and kind of play out his golden years with a good quarterback and a good offense with a good coach.
Yeah, it's the perfect spot for him.
Yeah.
What about his former partner in crime, Aaron Rodgers? Lots of buzz around him going to Pittsburgh. You actually called this on an episode a few months ago where you said you thought Pittsburgh would be a good fit for Rodgers. I mean, I think Rodgers should retire. I think he's nuts to come back. I've expressed that before, but I will say, if he's going to end up anywhere, Pittsburgh is probably the best fit for him.
Yeah.
I don't see it working for him in Pittsburgh. I think it will be an 8-9, 9-8 type thing. But I think that's the best you're going to get for him right now.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I'm not super high on Aaron Rodgers, but the one thing that I guess I just want to throw out there is, and I know he's older now. He's what, 41, 42.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You know how dysfunctional of an organization the Jets have been. You know what they've done to quarterbacks in their career, right? And between those two things and the fact that Aaron Rodgers was coming off of a torn Achilles, if he was 35 years old, I don't think we would be as concerned, right? We'd say, oh, he's coming off of a devastating injury. The Jets are the Jets have always been a dumpster fire, blah blah blah. That the fact that he's a little bit older, I think, is what's giving us more pause for concern. I don't think it's crazy to say, you go to Pittsburgh, which has been a pretty well-run franchise. They have a great head coach, and now he's got the weapons, and he's 2 years
and a great defense,
right? And a great defense, and he's 2 years removed from an Achilles injury. I'm not going to completely rule out that he's got enough in the tank to lead them to a 10, 11, 12 win season.
I just have no faith in the player. I have no
Yeah.
faith in the player from what I've seen from the last 2 years. Like, I don't think he is committed to doing what you have to do to be able to play in this league at 41 years old. And we've really only seen one guy do that at this point. I mean, really, it's been Tom Brady is in his own tier when it comes to success over 40. I don't think Rodgers has what it takes. And I saw a guy last year that was a step slow, that was inconsistent. His statistics were not terrible if you look at his numbers, but that was somewhat meaningless when it really counted, he wasn't able to do what he used to be able to do. I don't think the guy has what it takes, Justin, to do it anymore. I really don't.
Yeah. And I mean, look, a lot of people feel that way. All I'm saying is if he is going to come back and play this year, I think Pittsburgh's about as good of a situation as he could hope for. Because for the reasons we just mentioned, he's got a
Yep,
good
I
coach,
agree with that. I agree
he'll
with that.
have a good coach. He'll have good weapons. He'll have a good defense.
And I think those Pittsburgh fans, because I agree with you, saying it's the best he could hope for is something I agree with. Saying that they have the potential for a 12 or 11 win season, that's where I'm out. I think they're an 8 or 9 win team. And I think those Pittsburgh fans will eat that guy alive if it doesn't work. And it will be great entertainment to watch.
For sure. And again, just to clarify, when I say 10, 11 wins, that's not what I'm expecting. I'm just saying, if Aaron Rodgers is, coming off of that second, that second year removed from the Achilles, if he can turn the clock back a little bit and figure it out, I think that's what his ceiling looks like in Pittsburgh. I don't expect it, but I'm not ruling it out.
All right. How about Justin Fields to the Jets? I see this as just like I don't know. I don't know what the Jets are doing. I don't know why people are so enamored with Justin Fields. I don't see him as having much of an upside. I think he's shown what he is. He's been in the league for 4 or 5 years now. He is not a consistent passer. He can occasionally make plays with his legs. He is a backup quarterback. I don't know what the Jets are doing. If they plan for him to be their starting quarterback this year, I think they are committing themselves to mediocrity at best.
Yeah, I was just
Frankly,
gonna
in that division, probably worse.
I was just gonna say I think they just signed up for a 6-7 win season. Like I think
Yeah,
that's what you get.
at best.
Yes.
At best.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they sealed their fate. Look, Justin Fields, we know what Justin Fields is. Okay. He's an athletic guy. He's a good gadget guy. He has some spare, I like what Pittsburgh did, having, some design plays and formations and whatnot, where you could kind of plug him in and utilize that athleticism. But he's not a franchise quarterback. And the Jets are so dysfunctional. They ruin quarterbacks. That's like the last place I would want to go if I was, if I was a young quarterback looking to revive my career. So I don't have high expectations, especially we talked about the Pittsburgh fans and the Pittsburgh market, the New York fans, the New York media, the New York market. Like they'll chew Justin Fields up and spit him out.
And let's use the Sam Darnold argument that we just used, right? For Justin Fields. Is he going to better talent around him and better coaching? No. I mean, the Jets have Garrett Wilson. They have some good players. They're not totally devoid of talent on that offense, but it's not Pittsburgh. Okay. The coaching is not going to be as good. You're going to a rookie head coach. It's a step down. What about this situation? If you saw what Fields was in Pittsburgh, what makes anyone think he's going to be anything different in New York, if not worse?
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. I think honestly, I think it's going to be worse. I think you're looking at a 5-6, maybe 7-win team. I think the Jets just kind of sealed their fate. I think it's going to start to implode because you know what? That was a talented roster, a super talented defense. And I think they're just starting to crumble a little bit. And I don't think it's going to get any better for them this year.
Geno Smith to the Raiders, Justin. This is my take. He is a bridge quarterback, not a franchise quarterback. Yeah. If I'm the Raiders, I think it's a great move to bring in Geno Smith. It makes them competitive, but they're not going to make the playoffs with Geno Smith. They're in a tough division with 3 other good teams, right? And don't sleep on Denver and what they did in free agency, which I don't know, maybe we'll get to that, but signing Dre Greenlaw in Denver was probably the most under the radar signing of the free agency cycle for a defense that was already a really good defense.
And the safety from the 49ers too.
The safety. Yeah, that's right. What's his name again?
Tua Funga, something like that, Yeah.
So he was one of the top safeties. So they already added that to a good defense. You got Mahomes and the Chiefs. You've got the Chargers and Harbaugh. Tough division for the Raiders. Geno Smith is going to make them a 6 or 7 win team. He'll have his moments. If I'm the Raiders, I am still trying to draft Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, Look, I think what you got there is a classic case of they brought in a bridge coach, and that bridge coach said, "Oh, who am I familiar with? Who do I know that can come and get the job done as a bridge quarterback?" And that's Geno Smith. Pete Carroll at his age, he's not the long term solution in Vegas. Geno Smith, he's not the long term solution in Vegas. Um, I think it's exactly what you said. I think they brought in a bridge situation at quarterback and coach to kind of make them viable, and just hopefully get themselves to a place where they can at least be respectable and compete and start to bring in and build around them.
One last one, then we're going to wrap it up. The Bengals and T. Higgins and putting
Yeah.
what are the Bengals doing? Did you see the money that they paid Mike Gesicki?
Yeah.
I watched this guy in New England. He is not anything special. They continue to dump money on that offense. They're shopping their defensive star Hendrickson around on a team that couldn't stop anyone last year.
You're right.
What is the Cincinnati Bengals doing? That one I don't understand.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think the Cincinnati Bengals right now are one of the most poorly run franchises in football. I mean, you got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got Joe Burrow. Um, it, how the hell are you not loading up and building everything you can around those guys? Their defense, again, like you said, they've made no efforts to turn themselves into a top tier defense. They keep screwing around with T. Higgins. The guy clearly deserves a contract. They go and give the money, like you said, to Mike Gesicki. There's just so many mistakes that team is making. I heard rumors that, you know, if things don't turn out well this year, that Joe Burrow is planning on asking for a trade next offseason. I think
Huh.
the rumors are swirling that he's getting pretty unhappy with management. And I can't blame him. I think it's just been
Yeah.
awful in Cincinnati. You look at what that team did, uh, coming off of that Super Bowl appearance against the Rams a couple years ago. You would think they would have taken that momentum and done like what the Commanders are doing and said like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, we got a young quarterback. We had a flash in the pan. We outperformed our expectations. Let's let's build, and let's make moves now." If anything, they've just gotten worse. It's baffling.
It feels like they're wasting Joe Burrow.
Yes,
Joe
100%.
Burrow's prime. It feels like they're wasting Joe Burrow's prime. I mean, look, I'm sorry. You can't win with no defense, even in today's NFL. You have to trade T. Higgins, let him walk, and build your roster, build your front seven, build your defense. That's it. That's the bottom line. You can't have all of your money invested in quarterback, receiver, and tight end. It's not going to work,
Right.
and they're not going to win. They'll be exciting. They'll be fun. They'll win 7 to 9 games. They're never going to win a Super Bowl like that. They're wasting Joe Burrow's prime.
Yes, 100%. And it's a shame because and I've said this for a long time, I think he's the second best quarterback in the NFL. If not, I think he's at least third or fourth. And he's not getting the chance to go out there and I think he hit his full potential. I mean, look at his numbers. Look at his numbers last year. I mean, the guy
Yeah.
put up MVP type numbers on a team that didn't
Right.
even make the playoffs. It's like,
And you can't make a playoffs with a guy that's that productive. I mean,
yeah,
there's something wrong.
exactly.
And then one last quick one for you, then we're going to wrap it up. The Commanders, because you just mentioned them and we didn't mention them, but I got to say, I think like you just hit on, I love what they did, the aggressiveness they showed. You've got Jaden Daniels. You don't need to wait till you're 4 or you're 5, but get in there and strike while the iron's hot
Yep.
and make your bid. And that's what they did. They were super aggressive, bringing in Debo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil. I love the aggressiveness. And honestly, with what's happened to Philadelphia in the last couple of weeks and what they've done in the last couple of weeks,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they're not the favorite going into the NFC East going into next year.
And speaking of Philadelphia, Darius Slay, big play Darius Slay, who just got released by the Eagles, he has expressed interest in joining the Commanders. So it'd be interesting to see if that comes full circle. But yeah, that Commanders team is doing exactly what they should. They hit on their quarterback. They're trying to build the momentum, and they're not wasting any time. And guess what? Jaden Daniels, in a couple years, if things go the way that we anticipate them going, that guy is going to get paid. So they are going to do everything they can on this rookie contract, I think, to put the best team around him. Magic Johnson and this ownership group, when they took over, they made it known that they were going to operate a little bit differently. They were going to try to turn things around, change the culture in Washington, and they're doing it. They're definitely doing it. So I love I love
Yeah.
the moves they
And
made.
credit to that ownership group for
Yeah.
being a dysfunctional franchise for so long. And
Yeah.
that group has come in and they're not screwing around.
No.
And I love it. I love that it just goes to show you the importance of good ownership and how it can really change the franchises. And why did like the Bengals or the
Right.
Cardinals or, some of these franchises, the Jets, they just can't get out of their own way. And what's the one common thing in all of those situations? The owner is the same.
Yep.
The players change, the coaches change. It's dysfunctional ownership that trickles down.
Yep.
So I love what the Commanders are doing and the aggression they're showing. And then one last really quick one, because this just broke 2 minutes ago.
Huh.
Jacoby Brissett plans to sign with the
Yeah.
Arizona Cardinals. Hey, good for Brissett. We'll see him this year because Kyler Murray's getting hurt at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? Jacoby Brissett is back to what he should be doing. Just a veteran journeyman backup, who's
Yep.
there to just be a veteran presence. The guy has no business being a starting quarterback, or
None.
even at this point a bridge quarterback. He's there to
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, like, yeah, I love the guy. Fine, there's memories with him here.
Yep.
He kind of rubbed me the wrong way, the way he handled the whole Drake May thing and some of the bad blood he had about the situation. Jacoby,
Right.
what did you expect? Drake May was taken with the number 3 pick in the draft. The guy was showing from the second he got in training camp. Do you really think you were going to hold this job for more than a couple weeks?
Yep.
The reality is, with any other coaching staff in the league, May would have been the starter in week 1 or week 2. They kept this guy in for way longer than he even should have been in there. So to have a little bad blood about that, I didn't like that. You're a bridge quarterback.
Yes.
You're a bridge quarterback. You signed knowing what the situation was. So don't come in and be all disgruntled when you don't get to start. In October, November. I didn't like that. So I'm glad he's gone, and I wish him luck. He's a scrappy player, and he has his moments, but certainly I don't think a great loss for the Pats.
No, not a great loss at all. Again, like you said, I like the guy. I'm fond of him. I got, I remember when we first brought him in, the 2 spot starts he had, it was exciting. The memories are good, but it's time he moves on, and it's time he assumes the role that he should be playing right now, which is exactly that, a veteran backup.
No doubt about it. All right. Well, listen, anything else? I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, no, that's, I guess that's all I got on my plate, but I got to say, it's nice to have a little bit of football back.
It is nice to have a little bit of football back. I mean, it's 6 months until opening week. It's a long time, but at least it's something to talk about.
Yeah.
We're gonna have the draft now. That's gonna heat up. So that's always gonna be interesting. It's gonna be huge for the Patriots. This is a big draft for the Patriots.
Huge. And you know what?
No
Like, look,
question about it.
it wasn't a perfect day yesterday by any means, but what the Patriots did yesterday makes this next 6 months more exciting, significantly
Absolutely.
more exciting.
Yeah.
The Patriots started laying the groundwork for 2025 yesterday, and it's got me pretty hyped, and it should have the rest of New England pretty hyped to know that this team isn't messing around. So these next 6 months just got a whole lot more interesting for New England.
There's no question about it. And as I said a few minutes ago, they're 2 or 3 players away
Yep.
from having a pretty solid team, in my opinion. So
Yep.
they did what they had to do to put themselves in that position. So now hit a few of these draft picks, and we're talking. I mean, this team has to hit on the draft at some point. What they did this year, it was a bailout to go into free agency and do what they did. You can't do that every year.
Yep.
You have to draft successfully to be successful in the NFL. The drafting has been horrible. So now, it's a new regime, and they're going to have to hit on some of these picks. And if they do, it will be an exciting season this year.
Yes.
But that's it. So we're gonna we'll record again, leading up to the draft. I think
Yep.
we should do a draft preview like we did last year, mock draft. So look for that dropping in a few weeks. And as big news hits and comes, we'll certainly be covering it. Want to thank everyone that took the time to listen to this episode of the Dr. Football Podcast. Wishing you all a great week, enjoying the spring weather. It's not going to stop, I think, for the next week at least, which is great. And make the most of it, everyone. I'll catch you next time.